You may not even realize it, but your home might be holding something it was never meant to hold. An object sitting quietly on a shelf, hanging on a wall, or tucked away in a drawer could be carrying an assignment meant to drain your peace, disturb your sleep, or bring chaos into your relationships. These items don't always look threatening. In fact, many of them appear harmless, decorations, gifts, or curiosities. But behind their surface lies a spiritual intention you cannot see with your eyes. Most people think of their homes as their safest place, a refuge from the noise and chaos of the outside world. We carefully choose furniture, colors, decorations, and gifts to make our living spaces comfortable. Yet very few stop to think about the unseen net fear those objects might be carrying. A home can be spotless, beautifully decorated, and yet still feel heavy, tense, or unsettled. This is not always because of stress or bad memories. Sometimes it is because the items within the space act as silent carriers of negativity or dark intent. Hidden spiritual traps often arrive looking completely harmless. Artwork, charms, jewelry, souvenirs, or symbolic trinkets, but they can serve as doorways for unwanted spiritual influences. One of the most deceptive aspects of these objects is that they rarely appear threatening. Darkness rarely advertises itself. Instead, it hides behind culture, novelty, and beauty. A carved figurine might seem like just a cultural artifact, but its shape, symbols, or origin may be rooted in rituals that were never meant to be brought into your home. A gifted necklace or bracelet might look fashionable, but may have been created or charged in practices intended to attract control, lust, or misfortune. A painting on your wall may have been inspired by themes of despair or occult symbolism. Even if you never participate in the rituals yourself, simply keeping such items around can invite their influence, because objects can act as points of agreement in the spiritual realm. Many people assume that intentions are all that matter. I don't believe in that stuff, so it can't affect me. But in the spiritual world, ignorance does not always equal immunity. Just as you can accidentally eat spoiled food and become sick even though you didn't mean to, you can accidentally keep a spiritually contaminated object in your home and experience unrest even though you meant no harm. That unrest might show up as increased arguments, sleeplessness, recurring nightmares, depression, or a sense of heaviness that wasn't there before. People sometimes remove such an object without realizing its significance, and suddenly the atmosphere lifts. This isn't coincidence, it's cause and effect. Hidden spiritual traps also thrive on sentimentality. Because something was a gift from a friend, or a memento from a trip, or a family heirloom, we assume it is safe. But the spiritual world is not sentimental. A charm, a mask, a statue, or even a decorative object may have been dedicated to energies or purposes that directly oppose peace and light. Keeping it in your home can be like leaving a door unlocked in a dangerous neighborhood. Nothing may happen at first, but the opening is there. Recognizing these traps does not require fear, but awareness. It's about training your eyes to see beyond the surface, to notice symbols, origins, and atmospheres. Ask yourself, where did this object come from? What does it represent? Why does it make me feel unsettled? When you start paying attention, you'll notice that certain items carry a different weight than others. Trust that instinct. It's often the first sign that something in your home is not neutral. Removing hidden spiritual traps is not superstition, it's wisdom. Just as you wouldn't knowingly keep a leaking gas pipe or a frayed electrical cord in your house, you shouldn't keep objects that leak darkness into your environment. Clearing your home of such items creates space for peace, clarity, and positive energy. It protects your family from subtle influences that erode well-being over time. The goal is not to be fearful of everything, but to be discerning about what you allow to share your space. When you understand that seemingly harmless objects can act as carriers of negative intent, you begin to take back authority over your environment. Your home becomes more than just walls and furniture. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where your mind, emotions, and spirit are refreshed. By removing hidden spiritual traps, you're not only protecting your household, you're also making a statement that your space belongs to light, peace, and freedom. And once that statement is made, the difference in atmosphere is undeniable. Your home should feel like a sanctuary. When you walk through the door, you should feel your shoulders relax, your breathing slow, and a sense of safety settle over you. But for many people, their homes have begun to feel different, heavy, tense, or strangely uncomfortable, and they can't explain why. This is often a sign that something in the environment is out of alignment. Just as spoiled food can make you physically ill even if you didn't know it was spoiled, certain objects can carry a spiritual charge that subtly affects the atmosphere of your living space. Learning to discern these signs is not superstition. It's about recognizing patterns of peace versus patterns of oppression. One of the first indicators of spiritual contamination is an unexplainable heaviness or tension in the air. You walk into a room and suddenly feel anxious, irritable, or on edge. You may find yourself avoiding certain corners of your home or feeling drained when you spend time there. This isn't just your imagination. Environments hold energy, and some objects can act like batteries for negativity, slowly releasing it into the space around them. Another sign is disrupted sleep. If you or your family members begin to experience recurring nightmares, restlessness, or an inability to fall asleep without a clear medical reason, it's worth paying attention to the spiritual atmosphere. Nighttime is often when the unseen influences in a home become most noticeable because the distractions of the day fade and your spirit becomes more sensitive. If your sleep improves after moving or removing certain items, that is a strong clue that something you owned was affecting your rest. Increased conflict is another red flag. Peaceful households can suddenly become battlegrounds when a spiritually charged object enters the home. Arguments escalate over minor issues. Misunderstandings multiply. Even pets can become agitated, barking or staring at nothing in particular. While human dynamics play a role in conflict, objects can influence emotional climates, just as weather influences mood. When something carries an oppressive or manipulative energy, it can subtly stir irritation, depression, or confusion in the people nearby. Pay attention also to how your body reacts. Sometimes you may feel a strange pressure in your chest, headaches in certain rooms, or a wave of sadness without a reason. These sensations may be your own sensitivity picking up on a foreign energy. You might even notice plants dying in one spot or electronics malfunctioning repeatedly in a certain area. These are not always coincidences. They can be symptoms of a deeper issue in the environment. Another key sign of contamination is attraction to darkness. If an object carries a spiritual charge, you may find yourself thinking differently, feeling drawn to habits you had left behind, or struggling with thoughts that are not normally yours. This is subtle but powerful, and it can take time to recognize. The point is not to live in fear, but to become aware. If your home's atmosphere changes after you bring something in, don't dismiss the possibility that the item is influencing more than your DA core. Testing this is simple. Remove the object you suspect for a few days and notice the difference. Often the atmosphere will shift almost immediately. People report feeling lighter, sleeping better, and arguing less once the offending item is gone. This is not magic. It is the natural result of removing an open door that was allowing negativity into your environment. Discerning these signs requires both observation and intuition. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Keep a journal of changes in your home's atmosphere and correlate it with new items or gifts. Over time, you will sharpen your ability to sense when peace is being drained or oppression is creeping in. The goal is not to fear every object, but to protect your sanctuary. By learning to discern the signs of spiritual contamination, you reclaim authority over your space and create an environment where peace, clarity, and positive energy can thrive. All over the world, objects carry meaning. Some are symbols of love, beauty, or history. Others are rooted in practices that are anything but harmless. Because of this, your home can unknowingly become a repository for items that act like open doors, subtly changing the atmosphere and inviting darkness where there should be peace. These objects don't always look sinister. In fact, they often arrive as gifts, souvenirs, or decorative pieces. Yet, understanding which kinds of items are frequently used to anchor negative energy can help you guard your environment and keep your household spiritually clean. One of the most common types of items is occult or ritual paraphernalia. These can be statues, charm amulets, or tools once used in practices meant to summon, manipulate, or control unseen forces. Even if sold as souvenirs or cultural artifacts, their designs often bear symbols or inscriptions linked to rituals you may know nothing about. When brought into a home, these objects can retain the atmosphere of their origin, gradually influencing the environment around them. Another category is symbols or artwork with hidden meanings. Some decorative pieces contain symbols tied to despair, destruction, or the glorification of darkness. Masks, talismans, or wall hangings originating from certain rites can look striking, but were never meant to be displayed casually. They were created to channel energy, and simply owning them can serve as a point of agreement in the spiritual realm. Cursed or charged jewelry is also common. Bracelets, pendants, or rings sold as energy enhancers or protection charms may have been intentionally imbued with intentions you did not consent to. Wearing them or even keeping them near your bed can act like carrying someone else's spiritual agenda into your private space. Another overlooked category is gifted items from questionable sources. Sometimes people knowingly or unknowingly give objects that carry spiritual baggage. A decorative trinket from someone involved in dark practices or living with destructive intentions can function like a Trojan horse. It sits quietly in your space while the influence attached to it begins to work. Then there are books, music, or media steeped in destructive themes. While not physical charms in the traditional sense, they can carry ideas and atmospheres into your home. Objects that glorify death, hatred, manipulation, or fear can act as constant broadcasts of negativity into your living space. Even mirrors, dolls, or figurines can serve as carriers if they've been used in ritualistic contexts. Around the world, dolls have been employed for spiritual purposes, mirrors for scrying, and figurines for invoking certain presences. Not every mirror or doll is dangerous, but when you inherit or purchase one with an unknown history, you may be bringing more than an antique into your home. Finally, handmade items from ritual sites, stones, feathers, soil, or blessed items collected from shrines or ceremonies can bring the residue of those practices with them. Many travelers pick up authentic tokens from exotic places without realizing they were taken from altars or sacred spaces meant for offerings. Once at home, these seemingly innocent keepsakes can release an energy you never intended to host. Recognizing these 7 common categories is not about paranoia, it's about stewardship. Just as you read labels before you eat food, you should be mindful of what you allow into your living space. Ask where the object came from, what it represents, and why you are keeping it. If you feel unsettled around an item or notice a change in atmosphere after bringing something in, trust that instinct. Remove it, bless your space, and see if peace returns. Your home is more than a storage place for things. It is an environment for your mind, body, and spirit to rest. By identifying and removing objects that were never meant to dwell there, you are closing doors that should never have been open and reclaiming your space as a place of light, peace, and safety. Most people assume that an object is just an object, wood, metal, stone, or fabric arranged into a certain shape. But across every culture there has own understanding that objects can carry meaning, intention, and even atmosphere. They can be like sponges, absorbing what they were made for, or like transmitters, sending out what was placed in them. When such an item enters your home, it can begin to influence your environment quietly, almost imperceptibly, the way a faint smell fills a room before you realize it's there. This is how these objects work. They do not crash through the door. They whisper into the atmosphere, slowly shifting what you feel, think, and even how you interact with others. At the most basic level, every space has an emotional temperature. Some homes feel warm and inviting the moment you step inside. Others feel cold, tense, or heavy for no obvious reason. Objects connected to dark practices or harmful intentions work by subtly changing this temperature. They act like small but persistent leaks of negativity, releasing an unseen charge that influences the mood of the room. Over time, the people living there begin to adapt to the new atmosphere without realizing it. They may feel more tired, less joyful, or more irritable, chalking it up to stress rather than an external influence. These objects also influence emotions directly. Just as certain music can lift your mood or certain scents can calm you, objects can transmit a frequency of sadness or unrest. A figurine, charm, or piece of jewelry, once used in a ritual of control, may carry a lingering energy that produces anxiety or confusion in those who touch or live near it. Without realizing why, people begin to feel unsettled, argue more often, or experience waves of discouragement. It's not that the object has a personality of its own. It's that it carries an imprint of the intention attached to it, the way a letter carries the words of the one who wrote it. Another subtle effect is on sleep and mental clarity. Many people who unknowingly keep such objects report vivid nightmares, difficulty resting, or a sense of being watched. The mind becomes cluttered with intrusive thoughts, making it harder to focus or pray. Because the change is gradual, they may not connect it to the item in the room, but the correlation is often revealed when the object is removed and the disturbances stop. Perhaps most overlooked is how these objects influence relationships. Atmosphere is contagious. A single item with a negative charge can turn a peaceful home into a place of friction. Couples who once communicated easily may find themselves snapping at each other. Children may become more anxious or rebellious. Guests may comment that the house feels different or off. This is because the spiritual climate of a space shapes the emotional interactions within it. Just as a cheerful, well-lit cafe invites laughter and conversation, a dim, oppressive environment suppresses warmth and openness. The mechanism is not mystical in the sense of fantasy. It's simply the outworking of agreement. Objects connected to darkness serve as silent invitations, aligning the space with a frequency that does not belong there. They work through symbolism, through memory, through the unseen imprint of intention. In the same way, a room decorated with inspiring words and colors can lift you without a sound. A room holding a spiritually contaminated object can drain you without a warning. Understanding how these objects work shifts you from fear to authority. You are not powerless. Once you realize that your environment is responding to what you allow into it, you can begin to take back control. By removing what carries darkness and replacing it with things that carry light, you reset the atmosphere, your emotions recover, and your relationships begin to heal. This is why discernment about what enters your home is not superstition but stewardship. The unseen affects the seen. And when you take care of your environment, you are taking care of your spirit and the spirits of those you love. Once you recognize that certain objects can act as carriers of negativity or oppression, the next question becomes, how do you break their influence? The process is not complicated, but it requires both practical action and spiritual intention. Just as you would clean your house of dirt or remove spoiled food from your kitchen, you must be willing to remove what is contaminating your environment spiritually. Ignoring it will not make it go away. The longer you keep such items, the more they settle into the atmosphere of your home. But once you decide to cleanse your space, you will notice how quickly peace returns. The first step is awareness. Walk through your home slowly and intentionally, observing the objects in each room. Pay attention not just with your eyes, but with your spirit. Notice if anything stirs discomfort, heaviness, or unease. Sometimes you will know immediately which item feels, while other times it may take reflecting on where the object came from, what it represents, or how the atmosphere changed after it entered your house. Trust your instincts. They are often the first line of discernment. The second step is removal. Once you identify an object that carries a negative influence, do not hesitate to get rid of it. Some people try to hide it in a drawer or move it to another room, but that only relocates the problem. The most effective step is complete removal, discarding, destroying, or disposing of the item so it no longer has access to your space. This act is more than physical cleanup. It is symbolic of shutting the door on whatever influence that object carried. The third step is cleansing. After the object is removed, take time to reset the atmosphere of your home. Open windows, let in fresh air, and speak words of blessing, truth, and peace into the space. Many people use prayer to intentionally invite light, protection, and clarity back into the environment. You can walk through each room, declaring that your home is a place of rest, safety, and positivity. This act shifts the frequency of your space, reinforcing that darkness has no more permission to remain there. Another practical step is to be careful with what you allow into your home going forward. Think of it like maintaining hygiene. You don't just wash your hands once, you make it a regular habit. The same applies to your living space. Before accepting gifts, souvenirs, or antiques, ask where they came from and what they represent. If something carries symbols or associations that do not align with peace, there is no need to welcome it into your sanctuary. Prevention is often easier than cleansing. Protecting your space also requires ongoing mindfulness. Regularly walk through your home with awareness. If you notice an object making you uneasy, don't dismiss it as imagination. If your family begins to experience unrest, consider whether something new has entered your environment. Cleansing your home should become as natural as dusting furniture or washing dishes. It is part of caring for the unseen atmosphere in which you live. Finally, remember that authority begins with you. No object, however negative, has more power than the choice you make to reject it. Fear is not necessary because fear itself is another form of bondage. Instead, act with confidence and clarity. Removing objects and speaking life over your home declares that you will not tolerate hidden traps. This decision realigns your household with peace and creates an atmosphere where your spirit, emotions, and relationships can thrive again. Breaking the influence of contaminated objects is ultimately about reclaiming ownership of your environment. You are saying, this home is not a place for darkness. This is a place of safety, clarity, and freedom. Once you make that decision and follow through with action, you will notice the shift. The heaviness lifts, rest returns, relationships improve, and your home feels like a sanctuary once more. Cleansing your space is not superstition, it is stewardship. And the result is a life lived in greater peace and strength. There is a noticeable difference between a house and a home. A house is only walls, floors, and ceilings. But a home is where your spirit settles, where your heart finds rest, and where your family draws strength. When harmful objects have been removed, the atmosphere shifts dramatically, almost like opening windows after a long, stuffy winter. The air feels lighter, the tension begins to dissolve, and a sense of calmness settles over the space. This is the beginning of living in freedom. When your home is no longer burdened by hidden influences, but becomes a sanctuary where peace can flourish. Creating such an atmosphere is both intentional and continuous. Removing negative objects is not the end of the journey. It is the doorway into something greater. Freedom is not just the absence of darkness, it is the presence of light. Just as a garden cannot remain empty after weeds are pulled, but must be filled with healthy plants. Your home must be filled with things that reinforce peace, clarity, and protection. This doesn't mean crowding your space with objects, but rather cultivating an atmosphere that continually nourishes your spirit. One way to live in freedom is to surround yourself with reminders of hope, truth, and love. Words of encouragement on your walls, uplifting books, and music that inspires can all shift the tone of your environment. Every object you allow into your home should serve a purpose, either functional or uplifting. Instead of letting random items accumulate, choose things that align with the atmosphere you want to cultivate. A candle that brings warmth, a picture that reminds you of family joy, or a piece of art that celebrates life can all become anchors of peace. Another vital element of living in freedom is cultivating daily practices that reinforce the new atmosphere. Just as clean your home physically, cleanse it spiritually with words of blessing, gratitude, and prayer. Walk through the rooms, giving thanks for the roof over your head and speaking peace into every corner. This act may seem simple, but it strengthens the spiritual boundaries of your space. It reminds you that your home is not just a storage place for things, but a sacred environment for your life. Relationships also play a role in creating freedom. A home filled with constant arguing, fear, or negativity cannot remain peaceful no matter how many objects are removed. Choosing kindness, forgiveness, and communication builds an atmosphere stronger than any DA core. The energy of the people who live in the space is just as powerful as the items placed within it. When your words build up instead of tear down, and when love outweighs frustration, the entire home begins to glow with a sense of security and unity. Protection is another dimension of freedom. A clean home can remain protected if you are mindful of what enters. This means being cautious about gifts, purchases, or souvenirs, as well as monitoring the media and influences that pour into your space through screens and devices. Darkness often sneaks in unnoticed, not with loud knocks, but with subtle whispers. Protecting your home means being proactive, closing doors to anything that carries chaos and opening doors only to what fosters life. Living in freedom is ultimately about alignment. When your home is aligned with peace, it reflects in your emotions, your sleep, and your relationships. You wake up refreshed instead of restless, You feel energized rather than drained, and you find that even guests notice the difference. They may not be able to explain why your home feels different, but they will sense the calmness, the lightness, and the warmth. That is the evidence of a house transformed into a sanctuary. This kind of environment does not happen by accident. It happens by choice. Every decision to remove what does not belong, to bless what remains, and to protect what enters contributes to the freedom you experience. A free home is not only a place of safety for you, but also a place where others can find encouragement, rest, and inspiration. By filling your space with light, peace, and protection, you are not only safeguarding your present, you are building a legacy of freedom that will ripple into the future. You've now seen what many people never stop to think about, that not everything inside your home is harmless. Some objects are more than decoration. They are carriers of energy, intention, and influence. They can be traps, hidden in plain sight, drawing heaviness into your atmosphere and draining your peace. You've learned how to recognize the signs of contamination. When your rest is disturbed, when conflict rises without reason, when the air feels heavy, or when your joy seems stolen. You've been shown the 7 most common categories of objects that act like doorways for oppression, things that often look innocent but carry a deeper purpose. You've also discovered how they work, how they silently shift emotions, weaken relationships, and cloud clarity. But awareness alone is not enough. That's why we spoke about breaking the influence, taking practical and spiritual steps to remove what does not belong, cleansing your home, and declaring it a place of light and safety. And we ended by seeing the greater purpose, not just removing darkness, but living in freedom. A freedom where your home becomes a sanctuary. Your atmosphere is filled with peace, your sleep is undisturbed, and your family flourishes in protection and harmony. The truth is this: your home is more than a shelter for your body. It is an environment that shapes your spirit and the spirit of everyone who enters. You cannot afford to be careless with what you allow inside. Every object carries a story, and every story carries a spirit. Some of those spirits do not belong with you. By removing them, you close doors that were never meant to be open, and you reclaim your space as a place of rest and safety. So the call is simple but urgent. Walk through your home, open your eyes, and take action. Don't excuse, don't delay, and don't compromise. If something stirs your spirit with unease, if something has a history that doesn't align with peace, remove it. Cleanse your space, bless your rooms, and fill your home with what strengthens and uplifts. Because a house filled with light has no room for darkness. This is not just about objects, it is about authority. You have the authority to decide what influences your environment, your family, and your future. Choose wisely. Choose peace. Choose freedom. And when you do, you will notice the difference, not just in your home, but in your life.